Yes, welcome to the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy, once again hosting a conversation with a business communication expert so that you and I can learn tips and strategies that will boost our business. Today, it's a pleasure to welcome Stone Payton from the Atlanta, Georgia area. He's managing partner and radio host of Business RadioX, amplifying the voice of business. And we're going to talk about that. He's a sales professional and a sales coach for more than 30 years. What does he do? On his LinkedIn profile, he says, I help small business owners win more local business and dominate their local market. I show you how to leverage the Business Radio X platform to build and strengthen real relationships. He's also an author of the book Speed. That book is in its second printing. So please join me as I very happily welcome Stone Payton. Hello, Stone. Good morning to you.
Hello, Dr. Bill. Thanks so much for having me on the show, man.
Yes, sir, Stone. Let me ask you this. You've been, as I said, associated with sales for more than 30 years in one capacity or another, active in sales, sales training. What is it initially that attracted you to sales?
Getting out of the basement of my uncle's consulting firm, I had developed a pretty solid skill set in setting up shipments for FedEx and UPS. My job in that consulting firm, Bill, was to make sure that page 12 came between page 11 and 13 in the training manuals.
How exciting. How exciting.
So so I had an opportunity to move out of that, get into the marketing side of the business. And so I did do some design and delivery work with that firm and others through the years. But for the most part, I've been on the sales and marketing side of training and consulting.
Well, now, in more recent years, that sales and marketing side has morphed into radio. Tell me how that happened. Tell us, please.
So that was, I mentioned working with training and consulting firms, and I've been hired and fired from some of the more prestigious boutique consulting firms on the planet. But after the last one, I went out on my own, did some keynote work, and self-published a book that you were kind enough to mention a moment ago. And as you well know, Dr. Bill, when you publish a book, you'll go on any TV, radio show, courthouse steps that'll let you.
And all of a sudden, you're an authority.
There you go. And you got to get out there and talk about it. So I had the distinct pleasure of coming on Atlanta Business Radio. We were not a network at that time. Lee Cantor ran that network. And the person who actually invited me to that show was a lady by the name of Amy Otto. And it was just such a marvelous experience, very different from the other radio appearances I had been on. It was a long form conversation like you obviously do. I got a chance to talk about me and my work and the why behind the work. And I just got very enamored with that whole dynamic. Very quickly on became a client. And then I bet it wasn't 90 days, Bill, I wrote a little bigger check and bought me a career.
I think what you're saying there is very significant in that many times if we're interviewed on radio or television, it's a sound bite. And if we get 3 minutes, we are very fortunate. Sometimes it's 90 seconds, if at all. And so to have the opportunity to talk about your business for 15 or 20 minutes, that's quite rare. And we get to really explain and expand rather than just giving that sound bite. So once you had been a guest on that type of show, what prompted you and how did you get into being a manager and a promoter of the format?
So the very first step was becoming a client. So immediately after the show, and then I kept bugging him, I'm trying to figure out how Lee's making money. We didn't do commercials. We just had a great conversation. It was recorded. He gave it to me. I used it in my content marketing. We didn't call it content marketing back then. We called it thought leadership or something else. And I couldn't get a handle on how the guy was helping people and making money. And when he explained that to me and then helped me custom design a show, a media platform that would let me do the same thing for the people who were important to me that he had just done for me. It just clicked for me. And then what he was doing looked like a lot more fun and a lot more lucrative and a lot more fulfilling, candidly, than just going out and speaking and training. So he was marvelous, man. He embraced me with open arms, and we just jumped off a cliff and said, it's working in Atlanta. Let's spread this thing. Let's replicate it in other markets. And 15-year overnight success story. That's where we are. We've replicated it in a lot of markets now.
So, how many states and approximately how many Radio X shows are there?
I should have a definitive answer to that question. I do know because I did count last month. I think we have maybe 163 media properties. We don't have that many active shows and active hosts. That's probably numbers probably closer to 100 or 125, but they're broadcasting out of, oh gosh, probably 22 states now and maybe 15 physical studios. Gosh, I guess it's more than that now, and another 8 or 10 developing markets, because now we're learning we can launch those markets virtually and then come in and build the physical studio behind that.
I think what we need to underscore, Stone, is that the people who are hosting these shows are business people, often small business owners. They have most of them, no background at all in media. They don't have communication degrees. They haven't been through any courses. What's happening is that they are taking the expertise that they've gained over decades of leadership in business and industry, and they're sharing that in what's the most attractive style of all, and that's conversational style.
That's certainly been our experience. And for our system, and our system's not for everyone, if you would like to be a media personality, there's probably some better places to go. But if you're willing to buy into this idea of relationship first, serve first, support and celebrate the people in the ecosystem who are important to you, don't necessarily shine the spotlight on yourself, but be a good facilitator and give your best clients, your best prospects, your most important market partners a platform to share their story and promote their work, then that's what our system is designed to do. And so as a result, yeah, none of our people are radio people. Well, a couple are, but it's certainly not a prerequisite. And candidly, Bill, in the early conversation, it's a little bit of a yellow flag for me. I actually need to talk them through that because I need my studio partners and even my client hosts to be more facilitators than personalities.
In other words, they're the ones who prompt the talking instead of doing most of the talking. They're the host.
Yes, sir.
And what exactly is meant by studio partner, and how do you get to be one?
So, what's involved in being a studio partner continues to evolve. In the very early days, it meant clasp hands with me and Lee Cantor and jump off this big cliff, go home and explain to your spouse why you're doing this. You're not doing what you used to do. And no, it's not like the radio you're familiar with and trying to, that's what it used to be like. And there are a handful of my early folks who have accomplished a great deal. They're making a lot of money. They're helping a lot of people, and they deserve every bit of it. That's over the years we've matured a bit, and that's not what it means. Now our entire economic model, our entire system is membership and subscription based, and we start easy, and we try to do something at the very front end of the relationship that's a win-win for everybody. No one's really rolling the dice very much. So we have an entire program that begins with being a Business RadioX ambassador, that actually there's no financial investment at all for that, but there's a nice value exchange for an ambassador in a local market to be representing us and us to be able to provide them with some of the same benefits that our paying clients get. Some of those ambassadors are always ambassadors, and that's fine. Some evolve and become what we call correspondents, and they file stories for us in these markets, whether they're geo markets or verticals. And then a handful of these people who have been correspondents for us become studio partners, and they actually run their own Business RadioX business. And then we're just a family, a federation of people who help each other run those businesses. But like later today, I'm going to be on a team call. There's probably going to be 30, 35 people on that call. And it's going to be about a third each. I'm going to have ambassadors, correspondents, and studio partners on that call. But it's an evolution. It's a process, and all of it's no contract, cancel anytime. And as long as we keep providing value, people have a tendency to either find a real home in one part of that process or continue to evolve through it.
As you know, I'm a not only a strong believer and an advocate, but I admit gladly that I'm a participant in Business Radio X because Bo Henderson and I weekly host North Georgia Business Radio X
Yeah.
in Gainesville, Georgia, and you and your colleagues are the ones who got us started on that. It's important for us to underscore how the guests benefit from this. The guests get a link to the uh, recording so that they have the podcast. It's a permanent link, and that means they can put it on their website. They can put it anywhere they want on their promotional material. Bo and I, every time, have photographs taken of the guests. They're put on the social media. Our guests get the photographs as well. So, in a sense, they're not only promoted during the time they're on the air, but they have an ongoing, permanent opportunity to make the most of their appearance with them. And I guess that's what most of your other hosts are providing as well.
It is, and I wish I could take credit for that approach to things. That's what I became so enamored with so quickly some 15 years ago, back when I had black hair, and met Lee. But yes, it is important to note we are earned media. There's a big fat red line that we don't ever cross. We never ever charge guests to appear on the show, and we believe everyone wins, including the guest, when we all share the material. So we want to make it easy, compelling, and attractive to share the stories that we capture throughout the Business Radio X network. And as you mentioned, each and every one of those guests, they have our express permission. They can repurpose that material in any way they see fit to educate their market and promote their work. Now, don't misunderstand me. There are lots of ways to write us a check, and in my biased opinion, lots of good reasons to write us a check, particularly if you're in the professional services arena. But you can't write a check to be on a show. You can't write a check to be a guest on a show, and that's a very important part of our whole ethos and our entire approach. And yes, I believe that because we make it so easy and compelling to share, I think that's one of the reasons that we get the exposure and the support and network wide and in all these local communities. I think it's that sharing mindset, that service mentality.
Another advantage, of course, is to the community because the community, by listening to these interviews, gets to know many small business owners that they wouldn't get to know. They also get to find out about charitable services that are going on in the community. I would say that an overwhelming majority of the people that Bo and I host on our show, every one of them practically has some type of charitable service that they're giving to the community. It enheartens our listeners to know that that much good is going on. You and I both know, and our listeners today know, that most of the news going around is bad news. Most of the news is about disasters. Most of the news, I won't even expound on that. I don't need to, but most of the news is bad news. And so it's wonderful to hear of people from two standpoints, entrepreneurs who have started with an idea and made it work, and then also those who we often hear the phrase giving back and pay it forward. And I would imagine with every show that you're familiar with, that comes across.
Well, I'll tell you, I'm speaking to you right now from our newest studio in the network. It's the Woodstock studio. It's actually, I've chosen to call it Cherokee Business Radio. The reason that we have this studio, this is Stone's studio. My day job is I'm the number 2 guy in the network, and I'm supposed to recruit and develop and support all these studio partners. But I've been promising my wife and myself for years that when we reach this phase of life, that wherever we move to, and we have a little home under contract here, a mile from the studio, that I'd open one of these studios. I've been here 6 weeks, and I'm not really here. I don't live here yet, but I've been here in this studio for 6 weeks. We have at least half a dozen causes, charities, community organizations lined up to come to the studio, and we've already interviewed probably 3 or 4. And that's part of the reason that we're here, as part of the mission and purpose of Cherokee Business Radio. And one of the reasons that we've met so many so quickly is the local business leaders that I'm in contact with. They, to a person, at least in this community, I think it's true in most of them, they have one or more causes that are really meaningful to them. And if we're sincere, and we are, about supporting and celebrating the local business community and these businesses, then we have to help them in that pursuit as well. So I'm very proud of, humbled by, and excited about the fact that in this little 10 by 13 room, we can help a lot of folks advance, promote, support the causes that are important to them.
Stone, this has been a very fascinating conversation, lots of good information, and what has been accomplished by Business RadioX in a relatively short span of time is very encouraging. I know there are people who want more information, so please share with us your contact information now.
So my email address is simply Stone, like the rock, STONE, at businessradiox.com. If you ever want to book a call with me, there's other ways to do it, but an easy way to do it is just go to a URL called bookstonephone.com. And the Business Radio X network, our website is businessradiox.com.
Thank you for that. I'm sure people will want to follow up and contact you. And since you've given your contact information, I'll give mine, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy. And so logically, my website is bizcommunicationguy.com. I invite you to go there, check my services to corporations and leaders, sign up for my online weekly newsletter, and give me a call so that we can talk about your communication challenges and problems and how I can assist you with them. Stone, any closing thoughts for us, please?
Well, yeah, actually, based on the tone of this conversation, and thank you so much for having me on the show and giving me an opportunity to share some of my perspective. But based on this conversation, I would share a little piece of counsel that 25-year-old Stone would not have followed.
All right.
A little longer in the tooth now. I'm 57. For those who aspire to build something, for those who aspire to be financially successful, fulfilled in their work, my counsel, for what it's worth, is serve first. Focus initially on just doing whatever you can to help the other person accomplish their objectives. I don't think that's a platitude. That I was told that multiple times in my youth, and I have seen it come to full fruition. So, yeah, my parting message is to suggest serve first.
I think, Stone, that might be called the law of reciprocity. I believe so. Wonderful advice. And like you, anybody who hears that early in life and starts following, they're going to have a rich life in a lot of ways. Thanks to Stone Payton for being with us. I encourage you to contact him. He's available on LinkedIn. And I also thank you for being with us, whether you're on the video show or the podcast. Be with us next week for another highly informative episode of the Biz Communication Show. I'm your host, Bill Lampton, the Biz Communication Guy.